Shalom and welcome to Choices. It's always a blessing having you with us. We say thanks and we appreciate it a whole lot. What's really going on? A question we're still asking ourselves. Why? Because it is important, relevant, and deserve answers. As a people, we did not come into this world empty, but full. God has blessed us with gifts, talents, and abilities, and we must develop them. Be a blessing to others in the homes, schools, workplaces, society, and the nation at large. The late Dr. Miles Monroe said, when we leave this world, we must leave empty. Use what God has blessed us with and be a blessing. Your choices, and God continue to bless you and beautiful Guyana. Thank you for staying tuned with us.
Even as we address the issue of what's going on, as we look around in our society, we see young people seem to be running amok. And we have to pull this thing back. This is not hitting at anybody, but in many respects, the family has lost its way. And wherever there are gaps in the family, there are groups, there are people that will attempt to fill those gaps. And we have to be very mindful how we operate. My father used to say that the easiest thing to do is to bring a child into the world. He used to tell me this as a young man. He said, are you prepared to be a father? Do you know what comes, what responsibilities that are attached to being a father? So you would say you have to find money, you have to work, you have to send the child to school, you have to, and a whole set of things, and this is what we need to see again. We need to see those gaps being filled by the family, not by gangs. Gaps for respect, gaps for validation. Some people, they curse the children all the time. Gaps for validation, gaps of respect, gaps of self-esteem. Telling the child that they can become, encouraging them to become. Gaps of finance, where there is no finance. Children will go and look for finances in other ways and get themselves into trouble. So the family really needs to consider, we really need to consider how we operate as families again. It's more than just contributing sperm, bringing a child into the world. When this child comes, what do we do? What avenues have we created for this child to grow and to develop? So here it is. A man come or a group of people come who call themselves gangs. They start to offer protection. They start to offer respect. They start to validate and tell persons that, you can become. And so the family again, this thing has reached a stage now where we actually pleading with people to start thinking differently in terms of how we deal with our families. More than just making children, but we have to put systems in place and plug away those gaps so that the family could rise in the way that God would want it to function.
I learned to listen as a youngster, 14, 15. It might have been, yeah, between 12 and 14. I grew up in a single parent home. My mother fathered me. Uh, I wanted a fire red or a mountain canary or a tower, like a ringneck or crown head, like all the boys had in the village lodge. And I would bother my brothers, two of them before me. Samuel, who's still alive in late 70s, and Paul, who went to be with the Lord. But those two guys, after I bothered them so much, they give me a bird and a cage. They give me a peace wing. Now, nobody worth their salt in my day would be walking around with a peace wing in a bird cage. But those guys, I learned something. After I got the peace wing, I then discovered that I needed to feed the peace wing. So I would go and pick seed and those kinds of things. But the easiest thing for me was to open their bottles and throw their seed into my trough. Well, they saw me several times and they both put me to sit down and they said, listen, if you want to have the fun of owning a bird, you have to be responsible to provide. Brethren, I kid you not, this is what I was taught in my home. I was embarrassed because they reduced what I was doing to their seed to theft. Did you get permission? I was given a lecture by my two brothers. Who were they are Sunday school boys. Somebody give me a lecture. And then they said to me, you have to take care of this board. You have to take care of this board. And I studied what they said, and I go and lose the board. Because I was taught by my siblings the important you want fun, you have to be responsible. I think you can read that. In the Bible, there's a man who was challenged, a man named Onan, to go and raise children in his brother's name. His brother had died. That was the practice. Onan went in, had sex with his brother's wife, deceased brother's wife, and then like he was practicing the rhythm method, he pulled out and spilled the seed on the ground. The next verse said God killed him. Reverend Semple, you'll tell those who are interested in finding that verse. God killed him. Fun without responsibility. We have to teach. I'm piggybacking on what was said by Dr. Husband. We have to teach our young men. You want fun? This is not just sex, but ownership. And I can take this on. You have a girlfriend. If you can't mind a board, you can take care of a girl if she gets pregnant. Gentlemen.
Bishop, you've touched both yourself and Dr. Hudson on a significant element of our societal and home development. It is dealing with what I describe as healthy masculinity. And it does not just happen. It is a transformational process. And I know I have a few transformational experts right here. So I'm sure you understand what I mean about it being a transformational process, because it must be deliberate and change must start from the inside out. I have found that if there is a gap in the healthy transformational environment, that gap is easily filled by the doctrine of the street. And the doctrine of the street is simple. It's the survival of the fittest. We come together, and even though we come together, it is those who can survive who will actually last. And hence, what we're doing here is to create an atmosphere, heart, where servanthood is developed, where we are willing to serve beyond the normal call of duty, because what is requires a level of sustainability. It's like raising your child. It's like raising your son or your daughter. Cannot be just for a moment. It's almost like a lifetime responsibility as you consistently transfer what is healthy behavior. Many of our young men have developed this by accident, but it is deliberately taught them, if not in the home, by several strong social groups. And there is where you see the wholeness develop, the complete person, not just physical growth, not just academic growth, but the wholeness of the person, spiritual, social, emotional, psychological, academic development of the young man. And I think that is what we are encouraging our communities, even governments, to focus on as we seek to address the problem. The problem has a solution, and I'm sure we can provide that solution.
You know, Reverend Asana, if you may permit me to add to the conversation, as we continue to look at some of the gaps, especially as we put the family under the spotlight, we must admit that one of those gaps is the whole notion of consistency at the level of the family. And for varying reasons, families are frustrated, maybe lack of, they're unemployed, relationally, they have challenges. And so some of them literally give up on the raising of their children. But what we want to encourage families today, reach out for help. Our children are impressionable. They are looking for identity. They're looking for a sense of belonging. And if we are not consistent in teaching, in empowering, and in modeling behaviors that will uplift and develop our children, they will look elsewhere for that kind of validation. And we must admit that some of these gangs and these groups that our children are attracted to, they are very influential and even exert some measure of control over our children. And so we have to be very careful. We have to, as we bring interventions, as we bring solutions, let us find a way to be consistent in their lives. Turn up at the schools, they have safety nets like the churches, clubs, other organizations. Let us be a part intentionally. Teach simple values of self-worth, simple values of respect, and be consistent. And I believe our children will do much better and they will be much stronger to resist some of the negative influences that they are going through right now.
I want to push in quickly this one about the one about consistency and the issue of safety nets. I was a member of the East Rhineville Community Center Boy Scouts Club. My father took me there, and so I used to go there every afternoon. They had some specific days, and we had Dr. Lee, we had drills. That is how I learned left turn, right turn, about turn. That's how I learned how you set a parade, tallest to the right, shortest to the left. Then you call them right and left turn, and then you march and you're falling in trees. And so you had this kind of, if you had 50 people, they had a kind of design where the center, the tall people were there, and the short people were in the center, and then you had the taller ones at the end, or you had it in that kind of diagonal line. All of those things I learned and things. But what I never forget, Mr. Gorin, and this is not abuse, but Mr. Delph was the Scouts master, and Mr. Gorin was one of the. And so anytime you see you started to engage in certain practices, you were disciplined. I'm not promoting this, but I remember people being placed in Gorin's car trunk, And Gorin went around the lap 2-3 times in the car trunk. You see, when you come out of that trunk, that person never misbehave again. And so sometimes we have these little things, we touching people, and everybody's soft, and they violating rights and so on. And some of these same things that would have been resulted in all those killings and shootings we see because nobody wants to hold this bull by its horn and shake it. You understand me? And so Mr. Goring did that. I probably could call him name now because he must be dead by now. But that man put you in that car trunk. And I remember my father coming in the afternoon to collect me. I can't tell him what Goring said, what Goring did, because once that gets out, Goring coming for you. So there was a discipline. The same thing with national service and so on. There was a discipline. All the wild hombres and those who intended to run wild, they were harnessed. And so that's on the part with thing. And then there was this, I saw this movie, I think we had showed it at church at one time, Bishop. I think we had for Family Fireproof, where this father, he took his resources and he took his daughter to dinner, and he bought an engagement ring for a diamond ring and put it on her finger, and they drank not rum, but they hit glasses and so on. So no poo-poo or moo or whatever you want to call could come now and show this girl some piece of gold, and she gets excited because she's being taken to dinner for some fried rice or something. This woman, this child, understood class, understood status, because the father did it. And so this is what we talk about with consistency and parenting. So you might not be rich to go to a fancy hotel and put diamond ring and so on, but you could take your daughter out and talk to her about men and about behaviors of men and so on. So you see this thing about rearing children. People believe it's just going and make children and then you laugh and say, I got 2 children, I got enough children. It doesn't work like that. That is how we add to the chaos in society, by not ordering our lives. I think I needed to get that off my chest.
Well said.
About 10 years ago, I heard Bishop Messiah said something that inspired me. He said that we have a lot of people describing the problems and no one offering real solution. And I purposed in my heart 10 years ago in 2016 that I won't just describe problems when I see them. And so my encouragement to that young person directly, I understand, what it is to be in a home, a fatherless home. And I know that, sometimes we seek attention through certain behaviors and actions. We might not even be conscious of it, because I used to lash out in school, never used to do my homework. And I didn't know that this was a direct result of the fact that my father was not in the home. But one of the things that I did, in order to counter a strong negative force pulling you, have to align yourself with positive people. And so I went to a space like Nolly Secundus, where I saw young men and women, smart, brilliant, far brighter than me. And I said, instead of aligning with those friends that would get me involved in foolishness, we used to go and lime, spend late, you liming on the corner. I met young men and women that were studying. Could remember Martin, he was preparing to leave and go out of the country. And I said, if Martin could do this, I should do this. I should go and study out of the country. But I didn't even think that, Martin had a father and a mother at home, while again, mother alone. But I just thought of it. I said, if Martin could do it, I could do it. And, I sit here as an attorney. I say that to see, there are always going to be negative things around you. I grew up in an environment where it was predominantly negative, but you have that duty to align yourself with positive role models. The duty is on us as well. So while Dr. Hudson points out men and women will be consistent in mentoring us, we have to make ourselves available for that help.
Umar spoke a lot about mentoring, and I'll talk a little bit about modeling. So I've discovered, I have a brand new son, fresh, and what's interesting is that even when I'm doing work, even when I'm walking around or whatever, he's always looking at me. And that's not something that I was really conscious about until I noticed that it happens a lot. And this idea of modeling isn't just a fancy theoretical framework. It is literally you as a leader, as a older person, as a senior person, you have to operate in a kind of way because you are influencing the next generation, whether it's intentional or whether it's not intentional. So you just acting or speaking in a specific way is enough to influence that next generation of persons. And many of the older persons on this panel, my father, Bishop Messiah, you have Dr. Lee, you have so many of the other leaders around here. Many young people are on the right track or have returned to the right track because of the sort of influence that they had, not only directly by telling them, don't do this or do this, but just by looking and listening to them. And another great example of this is even Pastor Singh, because Pastor Singh also has been able to model the idea of a father figure to many of those people in VBS or Vacation Bible School with the children, seeing him crossing them over the road. So the simple things that you do as a leader, as a person, as a father, as a brother, as an uncle, as one of the older guys around, influences the next generation.
I want to use some stats very quickly. Mentoring is modeling, modeling is mentoring. This came out of a scientific research of 14 weeks among boys dealing with mentoring, 10 to 17-year-old. And at the end, conformity to trust as a result of, after being severely abused, they moved their scale to 90% of developing quality trusted relationships in terms of reducing their hostility from being extremely angry and violent. They developed, they moved their scale to 80%. In terms of resilience, being able to stand up under pressure, even gang pressure, they were able to move their scale to 80%. In terms of being able to forgive, this was the most amazing. As a result of quality, trusted relationships, their anger over their father figure reduced and came to a scale of 80%. I couldn't believe that. It was amazing how, in terms of developing a focused or developing goals that they want to achieve, that moved from 10 to 60%. What was the weakest was the element of consistency, where they were able to consistently practice these new positive behaviors. That dropped by 4 to 40% as a result of not having those mentors consistently in their lives. It means, therefore, that if we do what Martin and Limar have suggested, we can surely see positive changes, but we must be prepared for the long haul.
The Lord willing, this November, my mother will be 87. And sometimes, during my childhood, I wondered to know if she was mad. When the estate whistle at Rosal Kanji went off at 4 o'clock in the morning, I would be awakened or I'd be forced out of bed to do some simple tasks. Pick up the cow dung under the house, look after the chickens and all of that. What was somewhat real frightening for me also is that my mother, anything that came to her hands, she would trash me, give me a good licking. I'm not recommending, not suggesting that. But the point I want to make is that my mother apparently knew that she had a duty to train me and to raise me in the correct way that I should go. It wasn't a societal responsibility. And so now I ask myself, given all that we've discussed, if it is a case where as parents, we are leaving too much to the society, we are bequeathing so much responsibility to the society, raise our children, rather than the responsibility being ours. And so I am making a special appeal to parents here that you consider the raising of the children. God has blessed you with children. It is your responsibility. Of course, the state will make provision, but it is your bona fide responsibility, your God-given responsibility to raise your children. So let us make a special effort once again to raise our children. In the society, those of us who would make intervention, God bless you, at the scout level, at the church level, we want to make this nation in which we live a better nation. So let me encourage all of us to put all hands on deck. But at the same time, my special call and my special appeal here today is for parents to reconsider how involved are you with your children.
If I were to add another M briefly, modeling, mentorship, I want to touch on two M's actually, mentality. I remember sitting in the college in the A-level law class and a teacher turned to me and said, I can educate you, but I cannot teach you to think. And I want to encourage our young people or those out there to think, to be not easily influenced, especially to do things that are not helpful. Think your own thinking, another young man would say. But outside of that, I want to encourage us for our men, even as Dr. Lee made that special call for parents. I want to add to that call or support that call by calling our men to position themselves to be the mentors, to be models, and to ensure that we can help the younger generation to walk in the path that is right and just.
We have a terrific battle on our hands as individuals, as family members, as men. If in the family there's failure to produce and demand value teachings that are value-based, don't believe that that situation will be eliminated. No, on the outside of your family, somebody's teaching them respect, but respect for them, for their own purposes. Listen, we will continue this discussion. We have to. This is Choices, and we pray we will together answer the question, what's going on? See you next week.
We thank you for joining us on Choices today. Remember, you can join us at First Assembly, LNP Durban Street, Workmanville, Georgetown, Guyana, for any of our special services. I'm Celestia on behalf of the set, reminding you that your whole life is the sum of your choices. God bless you.